Today, I want to discuss, is now the right time to introduce substitutes? Obviously, we're getting closer to the January transfer window. Sorare have said previously they will only make significant changes to the game in the January transfer window or the summer transfer window. So I want to see and share my solution, which I think works well. I think it improves the game, but doesn't take away from lineup building or predictions. But before we get into that, let's talk about my teams. Starting with my last week, where the DNPs hit me pretty hard. I had Moises Caicedo sit on the bench the whole game. I knew the risks of this. He was coming back from 2 international fixtures, and it was discussed in my Discord, link in the description. And I was just of the opinion that Caicedo doesn't really get rested too much. They were friendlies in the internationals. They need to win in the Premier League, and Enzo Maresca thought I can do it without him, and he was right. So fair play. These things sort of happen. I could have... What annoys me is I could have swapped in Marino. I knew Spurs would dominate them, and he was probably more likely to play. But if you look at Sorare inside, he would have been 70% likely, and Caicedo was 80% likely at the time, which I think says a lot about Sorare inside's insights, predictions recently. I just don't think they're up to the standard required. The ones before, Predictify and whichever the other ones were, I felt they had more specialists, more team specialists, and that's where you get the best predictions because they're better to understand rotation patterns. They share better, quicker updates. But I don't want to hate on someone trying to build a good product. It works. It's fine. But yeah, obviously that's why I want to discuss on the DNP topic, because it reminded me now's a good time. Hit with Fofana as well. So lucky to not get relegated. And otherwise, I got a nice promotion from Div 3 thanks to Liverpool being absolutely awful. And Van der Ven, DMP, nope, he actually played and hit a 0. I couldn't believe this. Well, I could, but it was just so frustrating with a really good team. Well, averagely good team, I guess. And I completely messed up the community team. Playing Ain't Nori was so silly because between one of them was going to be benched. They play the same position between O'Reilly and Ain't Nori. So, yeah, really sorry for that. We'll draw the community team winner for this week at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But I wanted to come on and discuss my live game weeks before they start, because you'll know on this channel I am confident. I know who I'm going to pick. I know my teams. I know why I'm picking them. And this week is different. I could not pick these teams. I could have, they're both Division 1. And to be honest, I was looking at the second team, which I think would be this one. And I was saying, is it even good enough to compete in Division 1? And I looked at my future game week and I was like, it's not so spectacular that I want to give up a game week. And I think it's probably good enough we have a chance in Division 1 to do well. It's got a chance of winning. It's low, but whatever. But obviously, by the time you're watching this, you'll probably know the results of most of these fixtures. But let's just talk about who you would pick, right? So you've got Mohamed Salah away to West Ham, 80% likely to start. He's, obviously the most famous Liverpool player. He plays every game, but he's been in such bad form. The results have been so poor. Arne Slot needs to try something. And when they did drop him once, they won 5-1. It was one of their best games against Frankfurt. So he's 80% likely. And even if he does play, is he a better selection than Bukayo Saka? Now, he's got a much harder game. He's away to Chelsea. But Arsenal are in ridiculous form. He's in ridiculous form. He gets AA anyway, which Salah's sort of lost this season so far. Like, he's not been able to create chances or take on players. He's been poor all round. So, even looking at, now I talk about it, even captaining Salah, I'm like, that doesn't even seem like the right choice. But it's Mohamed Salah, last season's top scorer on the entire game. He smashed it. His long-term average is still in the 60s. And it's at West Ham. It's a really easy fixture. If there was a bounce-back fixture, it's this. So I came down to it, and just based on form, I went form over fixtures, and that's Saka. And I'm confident. That's one I'm sort of confident in. Next up, Paulinho or Nico Williams. Now, I think the majority of you would go Paulinho here, guaranteed, because he's averaging higher and he's got an easier fixture. I would agree. However, what's made me pick Nico Williams in my top team is his ability to put up big scores the last time the fixture was played, and he's on decent form as well. Whereas, compare that to Paulinho, he's on decent form, he's getting assists and goals, but for a CDM, I don't think that is what I want to rely on. I think he's overperforming a little bit in terms of that area, which is pushing up his scores. Whereas I think Nico Williams is probably on his expected level of... why is it so long to get there? I want to get to his average scores. So he's 90% likely to play, but, you know, obviously he came off the bench here, and let's dial in the Premier League so we get rid of internationals. You know, it's not as easy fixture as Leeds, but against Leeds he got a 64. It's probably an easier fixture than Man United. It sort of depends what Man United team are playing, but he got 50 against Bournemouth, which I think is probably the closest we're going to get. You know, it's between Leeds and Man United in terms of quality, this Brighton team, and it's probably close to Bournemouth. Slightly easier probably at the minute, but Brighton are one of those unpredictable teams. So you're getting 59, let's say, on average, without a decisive action. But you can see, once in a while, he picks up a decisive action or two. That's just sort of the role he plays. He takes a couple of set pieces, he plays really high up the pitch. So if your like baseline is a 59 and your top tiers, sort of your hundreds, and one decisive action will be like your 80s to 75s, that's a really nice spot. Now, what you've got to be careful of, and there's a perfect example here, is if it doesn't go his way. So there is a chance where Brighton pump Nottingham Forest, maybe not 5-0, but that's going to have a significant scoring effect on his goals conceded. He'll be probably conceding fouls. He is quite big on the fouls, which is quite annoying, so hopefully he doesn't get booked. But, you know, he's a perfect boom or bust player. When he plays really hard teams, Chelsea or Arsenal, you don't want him because he'll just get absolutely mugged in terms of score. But if we do flick back to Brighton, the last time they played, they won 7-0 and he scored 93. So that's why I've gone for him. I do like having one boom or bust player, particularly in a team. 1 second, getting a phone call. So back to the comparisons then. We've got Bruno Fernandes versus Moises Caicedo. Now, Moises Caicedo is going to be very defensive in this game. He's unlikely to get goals or assists because he'll be, you know, trying to beat that really strong Arsenal midfield. And then alternatively, Bruno Fernandes has an equally tough fixture. You know, away to Crystal Palace with the form they're in, if they can't beat a 10-man Everton at home, they've got no chance against a better team away. But with both of these players, they are AA monsters. You know, Bruno's going to be winning duels, he's going to be making passes, creating chances. Doesn't matter if Xerxes or Mount or any of the other bums miss all the chances, he's still going to get points for that. And it's very much the same for Caicedo, but the other way. You know, they could get beat 4-0, but he's going to be winning so many duels. So, you know, there's an argument to be said that both should be in the team. But just looking at the averages, you know, because you remove Caicedo's ability to score an assist, like, obviously he can grab one, but it's not likely. I prefer Nico Williams because he's more likely to get an assist, and he's going to probably average that sort of 59, sort of similar level to Caicedo. But when you compare them head to head, I was just looking at previous fixtures. Again, like I did with Nico Williams, I won't run you through it. But in terms of fixture difficulty, you know, you can look at Chelsea to, you know, Barcelona or someone like that. And it came out Bruno was just slightly ahead. And it's probably because of that ability to get a decisive action. So obviously Caicedo will be slightly higher in AA because he's just really, really good at football. But in terms of your all-round score, then you add on your decisives. Because Bruno's on penalties and set pieces, it wouldn't take too much for him to go ahead. So I'm confident that Fernandes is the better choice, but there's such a narrow margin in it. You can't really be that confident because all it takes is Caicedo to win one more duel, which gets him a triple-double, and then you're getting 12 points, and then it looks like a stupid decision. So that's tough, and you get Mickey van der Ven. I just showed you, he put up a 0 last week, but he's sort of, I can't explain it, he's sort of a boom or bust player at the minute. He's really bad in strong games and really good at weak games, so there was a side of me that says he's going to absolutely rip. But he's been ripping because he's getting goals and assists, which he's very good, but he's still a centre-back. He's not he shouldn't consistently get goals and assists. So at the start of the season, he has got quite a lot. But I think over the long term, maybe that will dry down a bit like Paulinho. And let's not forget, Spurs look awful. They're really struggling. So a Van Dijk, who also look awful and are really struggling. But I'll just quickly show that Virgil van Dijk, even when he, not against PSV, but, losing 3-0 and putting up a 75, he's just outrageous. Now, I don't think they'll get beat 3-0 again, but stranger things have happened. But, if he puts up a 2-0 win, 64, he just averages so high, even when getting beat. 68, 2-1 loss, 2-1 loss, 42. He's a little bit unpredictable at the minute because, the defence is really unpredictable and, bad. He's given away a couple of negative decisives, but I think at the end of the day, you just go for quality. I don't think Van Dijk's the problem at Liverpool. Konate is really not helping him. He's obviously a bit slower at the age of 34, and he's just got no one picking up for him. I think if Robbo comes in, they're a better team than with Kerkez. And yeah, I think most people would agree that in this scenario, equal fixture sort of ease, but Van Dijk is a better average scorer. So then we come down to goalkeepers, and it's again quite tough because Leno will be more active. Spurs don't look clinical. Oh, he did score 3 against PSG. And Newcastle were just, they can be really good and really bad. It's just tough to know what Newcastle team you're playing against. But at the end of the day, you go for quality. Pickford was outrageous against Man United. He's going to get more saves. Yeah, he's pretty clear the better option probably. But, Spurs do look bad enough. I would obviously prefer a different goalkeeper here, but I don't really have many options. So I just wanted to say how much I struggled with this week's lineup building. So if I do win, I'll have to hold my hands up and say, got a bit lucky that I just put those together right, because it doesn't feel confident. Cole Palmer is back, apparently. I don't trust anything Enzo Maresca says. Don't like that guy. I hate him. He keeps ruining my bloody Sorare teams. But anyway, again, I really struggle with this team. Who gets the armband here? Robbo's 60% likely to play on Sorare. Sorare inside, isn't it? Not Sorare insides. Yeah, inside. I just see him being much higher. I can understand why they've gone 60%. They're basically saying it's a toss-up every game, and I think Andy will get this one, which is fine. I think it's more 75%, because Kerkez is awful. It's like they haven't won with Kerkez in the team for 2 months. Some outrageous stat. Rowe was obviously celebrating the Scotland World Cup qualification, but I think he's probably come back down to reality now. He's back being a professional. So I see him playing, and when he plays, he scores well. So if I truly believe he's going to play, I probably should have captained him. But Liverpool are awful at the back, so who knows? Marino has been fantastic, but what put me off, put him in Division 1, because I do think Arsenal will beat Chelsea, is so close. He put up a really, really bad score against Bayern Munich, and obviously they won 3-1, and I could sort of see the same happening where they win, but unless he grabs a goal or assist, then he's just not got the AA when he plays up front, because he's like a hold-up man with a bit more technicality about him. So I gave him the armband because he was the closest to getting in the other team. It sat on actually all of these players except for the goalkeeper in my selection, so I have no confidence in them. Danzo's nice at Romero suspended. I'm pretty confident he plays. And again, Fulham aren't that good, and he takes long throws, and the rest of it. Who knows? Cole Palmer could start and rip. But, like most people, it's a 50-50 if he starts. I'd probably lean towards he doesn't start, but he plays 45 minutes, maybe comes on at half-time or 60th minute. So, yeah, I just want to share, obviously, my insights, hopefully, give you some idea of how I make my decisions. And sometimes it's just too close to call. And I think a lot of these are just too close to call. So I tried to not look at it yesterday, not really stress myself out, and just be like, it's a game at the end of the day. You don't know the future. No one knows the future. You try and put them together and you hope to get lucky, really. So the communities team is probably the strongest team we have of the week. A Man City stack against Leeds. This could be 6-0 easily. and Morgan Gibbs-White had to come in because I made that stupid decision about Aït-Nouri. I'm pretty confident they all play except for Gibbs-White because he's only 60% for some reason. Because I was quite busy as well yesterday, I didn't have a chance to look at why he was 60%. Maybe he's just played too many minutes, but he's really good for them, and it's not a walkover fixture. They'll need 3 points. So, yeah, I am sorry to the community winner this week because you should at least be in Division 2. I made a horrible selection last week, and it just shows where, you know, being in those top divisions, we'll see what the score is, but I'm assuming it's a massive score. Being in those top divisions can really make or break your returns. Otherwise, we've got some champion classic teams, not really put too much thought into them, but it'd be nice if everyone starts. It's just very tough in SO7 to get everyone starting and scoring well, and then an all-star team of all the rejects. Harsh on that team because it's actually very strong for a reject team. But I think that is nice for now. What we can go back to before we finish and draw the giveaway winner for this week is the DNP scenario. So it's very simple. I haven't, come up with this, although I haven't copied it from anyone either. It's just a very common, obvious thing to do. Now, I think January is probably the time to do it. There's enough players on Sorare that have left the game because, they're trying to play and have fun, and their returns and their fun are capped by luck. Like plenty of times people have been ill on the day, or their wife got pregnant, or given birth to a baby, so they've got to drop out of the squad late on. All these things which aren't predictable, aren't fantasy football related, and they screw your team. Now, alternatively, when that happens, smaller or other teams that aren't affected by it do better. So it's not a perfect system because, yes, you might be really annoyed, but someone else is equally really happy that, let's say, Van Dijk's out. Hopefully not this weekend, jeez. So I want to keep that ability of, you can't just run a buy and stack, and if you've got the wrong team, someone else comes in and it looks good, because it bores you. You might think it's more fun because you've got 5 players playing, but the super stacks have 5 superstars playing every week. So it is a tough balancing game. I think most of you hardcore Sorare users have heard the arguments for and against everything by now. And my suggestion is simple. It's been rotated. It's just one sub, which comes in if your player scores 0. I'm actually saying scores 0 rather than DMPs because I want Van der Ven out on my team last week. But even if they don't play, whatever. He has to have a cap of, we'll start at 45 last 15 average. It could be 50, could be 41, could be 43. We obviously need to edit that as the season goes on. You might see subs are too powerful, subs aren't powerful enough. Once we know that curve, you basically have a 6th man sitting here, which comes in the event of a DNP. However, some of you will be saying, well, I'll just put a DNP goalkeeper in and I'll bring in someone I know that's a very high scorer but has a low last 15 average because he's underperforming or he's been injured. Well, no. You have to decide, do you want insurance, which is your sub, for your goalkeeper or your outfielder? That's where it gets a little bit interesting. You can't have both. So you might have a sub for an outfielder and your goalkeeper DMPs. You still have a DMP, like you would today. For example, if I put Pickford's back up here last week, the score would have been the same. He would not have come in for Caicedo. Alternatively, some of you might be saying, oh, does that not mean you could play 3 midfielders? Yeah, if Van Dijk was injured last week and Caicedo played and I brought in a midfielder, I don't think there's any significant advantage to having 3 midfielders or 3 attackers or 3 defenders. I genuinely don't. I've played this game long enough where I would be happy to let every other player have that ability to play 3 midfielders, and I don't. That's how little of an advantage I think it would give you. And the fact everyone can do it is it's fair anyway, So why the last average is because we don't want superstars coming in regardless of what happens. I think it makes your selections a lot better. So if we're looking at my current game week, I know someone with a low average might be Danzo. So do I sacrifice my Division 2 team to put Danzo in, one of these 2 teams as a substitute? It, requires more players, which is more revenue for Sorare. but it also brings more strategy to the game. It's very simple. People understand the idea of subs, but it's not so perfect that you don't need to think about your teams, because you need to think what's more likely: a goalkeeper DNP, an outfielder DNP, and who do I play? Because he will be used up. It'll be like any other card. You can't use them in 2 lineups. So that's what I think. It's a simple, obvious suggestion. We don't need anything complex. The game's in a nice spot at the minute, to be honest. People still complain about DNPs, and given my scores last week, I completely get why. I wouldn't call it unfair, because that's the way the game was set up. That's the risk I knew I was taking. However, I do think it would be more fun and more appealing long term if these things were slightly less impactful. Because by 12:30 on last Saturday, the first game of the week, I had 2 DNPs. I knew I couldn't win anything, so my fun was really deteriorated. Yes, I had some lower lineups that I kept an eye on, but they were my 3rd choice selection at best. So it's not ideal for fun. It's not ideal for, showing who's the best at the game when there's a lot of luck. But at the end of the day, it doesn't take all the luck out of the game. So hopefully you like that idea. Hopefully Sorare like it. And hopefully Sorare have at least a suggestion in January, and they can put it to the vote or something and say, this is our suggestion. We are going to try a sub for last 45. There'll be different ways they can do it, or, a late change, or whatever they try. If they even just trial it on like a very light version, or if they just bring it to the community and say, do you want this? Here's a massive poll on the game or something. I'll be happy with that. I don't think doing nothing would be good, because there's plenty of people that absolutely hate DNPs. Now we move on to the community team, where if you're drawn, you'll win all of the prizes for this team for this week. I'll be looking to strengthen this squad when I get a new job. That's why it's sort of slowed down at the minute, but I really do appreciate anyone that has donated. It is so great. We reached our first goal. We're going for £100. It's just so nice that people do enjoy my content. Minimum donation is now £2. That's because someone donated £1 last time. And when I looked at the fees these guys take in terms of payment processing, it was just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, sorry about that. But £2 is £2. So in terms of the draw, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Which unfortunately, Hershey and Sean means you are dropping out, because it's the last 10 that drawn, unless we do a comment as well. But today we're not going to do a comment, because there's been some new donations and I really appreciate it. Legionite Community is actually on there twice, so thank you very much to him. Malky Minster Valky, I absolutely ruined your name, but you are actually number 1 on the leaderboard. I did not know there was a leaderboard until right now, but you are number 1, so thank you very much for that. Let's get the draw underway. You, sir or madam, will be winning this week's. It's going to be tight. It's the biggest dono. It's a nice way to go. He gets the easy fixture, in theory, against Leeds. But I think that is it for today. Nothing else to mention. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, all the best to you. Cheers.